Let's. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 17 of Inspire Me Forward. This is season 2. I think when I started this back in January, season 2 was a long ways off. So this is exciting. And this season, we've called it Inspired Voices. Just sharing stories, sharing strategies of people finding their authentic voices, their true voices. And I always think of it as being sort of a pilot into our own lives. And I'd love to introduce our guest for today. So Nethmie Hetti, I'd love for you to introduce yourself for a bit.
Hello. As Linda said, my name is Nethmie, and I am an art director from the advertising industry in Toronto. And I kind of go back and forth between Montreal, BC. I'm a bit of like a digital nomad, as they call it. I always seem to be on the go, but I always like coming back to Toronto because that's where home is.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Well, welcome. I love that you said that you're in the arts, because I've been thinking lately about how at some point in our life we all sort of lose that true expression through social constructs, through life, through jobs, through traumatic events, whatever it may be. We always lose it somehow, and some more than others, but I think our journey is finding it. And so
Yeah.
much of that is often through the arts.
That's so true. And it's so tricky when you're working as like your means of making a living is through art can be really confusing sometimes, because if you're working for brands, which is what I did for the past 10 years, you're taking the voice of other entities and then you're like, who am I? Like I was working on hockey for a while. I don't watch sports, but all of a sudden everything in my life became sports oriented. So like you end up getting all these different perspectives, which is awesome, but it definitely, yeah, it can also be a lot, you know?
Exactly. And it's interesting to say that. As I was saying to you before we started, that I found some sort of quotes this week, and one of them was finding your true voice, but in a world that's full of clamor and noise and chaos, and it's hard to find our own. What is our own? What is our heart saying? And all of that stuff that's coming at us
Right.
all the time. So let's jump in. And I'm so looking forward to our conversations, but I'd love to give you the floor for a bit and share your story with us.
You know, it's so funny when you mentioned that some other people you've had on the interviews have said that sharing their story had been quite challenging and then I was sitting there, I'm like, how hard can it be? And I'm sat there just reflecting. I'm like, wait a minute, there's so many lenses in which you can share a story. The environment you're in, the person you're talking to really dictates what comes out of your mouth at that time. It's so interesting. But I basically grew up in Sri Lanka. So for the first 10 years of my life, I was in Colombo, and I grew up with, I would say, kind of a turbulent childhood, but I've always had this sense of obliviousness about me. So I kind of bumble from one thing to the other, and I very rarely understand what's happening until way later. And by that time, I've almost like mentally moved on. So that's kind of how I've been since I was a kid. And yeah, back home, I grew up in quite a affluent family. So you know, my grades weren't that great. And there was kind of this inherent feeling of I don't need to try that hard because I feel like things are going to be kind of taken care of. Um, and my parents got divorced when I was 3. And my dad ended up moving to Canada. So for 3 years, I actually didn't see him because there was like this whole custody thing. And when I was 10, I finally was able to come here. And I had no idea what Canada was. Like this was in 2005, and you know, like I was 10 years old, so I'm just like I don't know how to go. Like I barely knew how to use a computer. I was just like using Paint for things. I'm like, cool, we're going to Canada. Like, what is that? Where is it? I had no
Yeah.
idea. I get here and I just like so easily just like slipped into like everything about like the lifestyle friends, everything just sort of just kind of like fit into place. And it was quite lovely in that aspect. Even winter, I remember like the first
Oh,
moment when I
yeah.
saw snowflakes, and my teacher actually, he like paused the class. He was like, Nethmie's never seen snow before. And we all went outside. Like it was so beautiful. Um, but during that time, actually, when I was growing up here from age 10 to basically graduating from high school, I started to discover that I actually do have a lot of skills and talent that, based on the school education system in Sri Lanka, I had
Mhm.
never recognized before. So things like my artistic side, or like
Mhm.
things where I felt like I was very experimental, even like from an academic point of view, I just felt like I was starting to discover that I'm not stupid. Because at back home I really did think my IQ might be like quite low. So when I got here, I'm like, oh my God, like I can actually pass most exams and all that
Mm.
stuff. So that was a beautiful discovery. And I just kept kind of like getting into, like student organizations, after school activities. And I started thriving on my education and like school side of things and social side of things. And at home, I had a bit of a very hostile living condition. So I was living with, I would say, someone that didn't necessarily acknowledge my presence at the time. So I would be like in the house doing things, but like there would be no awareness that I'm there. Like it was almost like I
Mm.
was this fly on the wall, which was so interesting, that contrast, because I was such a bubbly, outgoing person on my other side of my life. And
Yeah.
then at home, I was like super quiet. And I always tried to just be busy so I don't have to be home. But I think that was the first time, like getting out of that living situation. I mean, it was with my father and his ex-wife basically. But once I started to get to college and really, spread my wings, I was like thriving, because I
Mm.
knew that, I think the exposure to feeling the way I did, where I was so clammed up at home, like, you just like you kind of just reach a ceiling, and then but I didn't even like explode in like an angry way. I was just like, I'm so ready to just like go do
Oh,
my
yeah.
thing. Because especially like kids and teenagers, like up until a certain point, you have the life that your parents have chosen for you. And then after that, now you get to kind of like have this all you can eat buffet of like, what are the things I want to do? What are
Like,
my interests? And so obviously for me, it was like, I want to go traveling. And I mean, I'm 29 now, and I started traveling when I was 19. And I think the school of life of being able to meet people that are completely from different walks of life,
mhm.
going to places and putting myself into parts of the world and situations where I have no idea what's going on, like really getting into these adventures without planning too much. I think I just started to like see everything kind of coming together, like my social skills, my academic skills, like street smartness, not just theoretical, like book smart, like that all started to kind of come together through traveling.
Yeah.
And from a professional side of things, I basically went to Humber College for an art direction program. So it was Bachelor of Arts in Creative Advertising. And I graduated from that, and just right away ended up getting into the ad industry in Toronto, and then eventually to Montreal. And as I was saying, at that point, like when everybody has to start in a place where they're just like diving headfirst into like the way the industry works, and you really like absorb what's happening around you. And I think it's just in the past, I would say 5 years or so, where I really started to get very experimental with the things and the art and the creative projects that I want to work on.
Mhm.
Um, Kind of stepping away from branded stuff and going more towards like, what are the weird things that I want to bring to life? And it started in the form of like projects or like artwork or whatever. But in that process, I also started to feel like that was getting me closer to myself just as much as traveling was. So these two aspects, I would say, are the strongest traits in me. I also through my travels feel like I really followed love quite a bit. So, meeting people, and there was specifically one or two people that really, really expedited my growth, maybe just through being in relationships with them abroad, and kind of like challenging yourself to these things alone. Like, you don't have any friends around. Like, I was living in Mexico, I was in Australia, and like, you're just like on your own. And so there were lessons there that I just feel like it was graduating from certain lessons really, really early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like most recently, I would say while I was in Mexico, I actually got exposed to, I would say, my spiritual side, and maybe a little bit before Mexico, actually. I've always had a lot of synchronicities and kind of like this in here, like I was saying before, like this obliviousness came from the fact that I always felt really close to my intuition, or had this kind of like naive sense of like everything feels like magic. Like, I don't know, like it's this very beautiful innocence that I've always tried to keep. And sometimes when I feel it going away in certain moments or situations, like I'm always like, oh no, like it's leaving. And it's usually when I'm completely off center, or like something is not right. Because when I am feeling that yeah, kind of like childish innocence, or that feeling of play, like life feels like play, that's when I know like I am the most me I could ever be. Um, so yeah, so in Mexico, I started doing these, ceremonies, meditations, yoga techniques, like all of this stuff kind of came into my realm quite recently. And from that, I've been kind of picking and choosing which things work for me and which ones I'm like, I don't really resonate with, because I'm not a very um I'm not religious by any means, and I'm also not atheist. I just feel like I like to have the freedom of choosing what I like to believe in, and it usually is a feeling. Like, I'm not necessarily a devotee to like any particular thing. And my family is actually Buddhist, so I have, I guess, like a baseline of Buddhist values. But even in that, I had to separate cultural Buddhism in Sri Lanka to, what philosophies do I actually like, from the lessons. So that's, I mean, and I'm just 29, so I feel like I have had so many things happen in my life, and sometimes I'm like, how has it only been like just short of like 3 decades? Like, I don't understand how so much can happen, because I ask my friends, that are like some of my close friends, like they tend to have a more stable life. I think there's less chaos. Um, but I've just gotten so used to it, to the point where I feel like chaos, I'm comfortable around chaos, I think. And sometimes it sucks, and sometimes it's awesome that there is chaos, because it's just like, it's just how it is. And for me, if it really feels comfortable to be in it. And ever since I was a kid, as I've been moving so much, like even with my parents, I had like my grandparents one weekend, and then my dad's parents another, and then 4 houses, in between, moved countries. And then here I've moved so many times too. And so to me, being a digital nomad, it's like a full circle moment where I'm just coming back to my roots. Are basically quite nomadic, I think, just from as long as I've been alive. And that's why I feel really comfortable living the way I live.
Excellent. Some people call that a gypsy
Yeah.
kind of lifestyle.
Totally.
So actually, it always comes up is everybody seems to have a touchstone from their childhood. So I
Mm.
had one guest that spoke of daydreaming was her thing. But then in life, people like, oh, stop daydreaming. Like in get into class and class be like, oh, stop daydreaming. But that was her touchstone. That was her thing she did as a child. What was something as a child that I don't get? It might lie in the arts. I don't know, but what's something as a child that you maybe have found as your go-to or your touchstone or your, something you've always had and maybe lost and come back to?
It's this could sound either really egotistical or really cute, but when I was a kid, I was an only child when I was growing up in Sri Lanka, and I just loved hanging out with mirrors. So I would just
Mm.
hang out with my reflection, but it could sound like really like lonely too, but it wasn't like that. Like I used to interview myself on my reflection and be like, so how are you doing? And just have conversations with myself. But I felt that, yeah, I don't know, it was like an extension of me. I would like check in with myself. It
Yeah.
was always me. I didn't have alter egos or anything like that. It was always me checking in with myself. And I mean, having a relationship with your reflection is such an interesting thing because some
Mhm.
people have, like, depending on what part of your life you are in, there's insecurities that pop up or things that you love or whatever. But when I used to see myself as a kid, I was just like, it's almost like an imaginary friend, you know?
Mm.
Um, and I mean, self-love has been I'm not like self-obsessed, but like I love myself and I love the self-love has always been a part of me no matter
Mhm.
what. And again, it's like that obliviousness,
Mhm.
but it's been like a survival trait, like it's helped me kind of like keep my head on my shoulders. So
Yeah. And I mean, that's people go to workshops to do that. to,
totally.
to speak to themselves in a mirror. And
Yeah,
so that's
yeah.
that's amazing that you've had that as a what were your what growing up, who I guess say were your I mean we look at some of your heroes, but who are your people? Who are your people that you could talk to like you talked in the mirror, like and that you could talk to about your art and like who are those people in your childhood?
My dad has been like a pretty big pinnacle in supporting me through pretty much anything I've put my mind to. Like he's just been he given the fact that he came from a very academic background, and especially as a South Asian, like they tend to get really pressured to go into law or
Mhm.
medicine or whatever. There's like these cliche stereotypes, and like I remember when I went to him and I was like, I think I want to become an artist, and he didn't even bat an eye. So it was just such a healthy
Mhm.
encouragement, and he just, yeah, like guided me through and through. So he was a huge part of it. Even my mom, like I have, in many ways, like they have just created such a carte blanche canvas
Mhm.
for me where I'm just able to do anything I want, and that's just such a, yeah, like such a blessing,
Oh
and
yeah.
in terms of a hero, I don't have like a idol or anything like that,
Mhm.
but I think just certain people, even like my professor that got me into college, like the dean of Humbert that was in charge of the creative advertising program at the time, Michael Rosen, he catalyzed the entire life I had after going to college just from that one conversation I had with
Right.
him. Sometimes it's just like little things that, like, to them it doesn't mean much, but when you hear someone else telling you like, oh, your portfolio is like amazing, or yeah, like you have what it takes, like of course you're going to be, it's like something so small but it sticks with you. So yeah, and then throughout my academics, I think even peers that I worked with really guided me. Like I always felt like I was surrounded by teachers, like even people that were like my age, people that are older,
Mhm.
even younger. Yeah, but I don't have like a North Star like hero, so to speak.
Yeah, but though you've got those people that were just your, again, go back to the word touchstones that
Yeah.
were there for you, and or that said those, just those things like you said with the professor that just lifted you up, so to speak.
Yeah,
Lifted you up a
exactly.
bit, if for want of a better word. Um, Talk about chaos. I love that you brought up the word chaos. And sometimes we see chaos as a negative thing, but I'm sensing you don't. And I find chaos, to me, chaos and creativity are very close.
Mm-hmm.
If I can sit
Yeah.
in that chaos and just watch it, always something comes out of it. There's
Yeah,
something swirling around in there, just waiting for you to go, there it is.
exactly.
So what, yeah, can you talk more about your relationship with the chaos?
Yeah, I mean, I think chaos, I think there's good chaos and obviously unhealthy chaos as well, but the chaos that, and I think there's a lot of uncertainty that's just in all of our lives, especially now more than ever. I find things are moving so fast, things are changing and adapting and evolving in ways that like requires you to be resilient because change happens all the time to everyone, and it can, and I've seen how it kind of like disorients people, and of course, and it's normal, like I think it is disorienting, but I'm trying to, through everything that happens in my life, to just be friends with that disorienting feeling because it's just part of our life. And you just, the moment you try to be like, all right, uncertainty is just always going to be there, when you
Mm,
accept that, maybe it takes the power, or like it diffuses the power away from
mm,
it. And
yeah.
now for me, chaos, yeah, like you said, like when I think of my, like what's going on in my mind, like I have so many ideas swirling around my head at all times, and sometimes I'm just like, all right, I need to like pick a few and do it. And yeah, and it's like you're birthing that idea, right? Like when you pick something and you write it down or something, you've given it potential. And if I don't do that, I find my mind gets louder and louder. So
Mm,
I need to move or exercise. I need to do my meditation, yoga, journal, all these things. Cause
yeah.
yeah, to me, like I do find that a lot of the times, like it's not like I have past memories or future thinking as much as I do coming up with ideas. And I think I actually thought about this recently, and I think it's because from work, what I do, like you get a brief from a brand,
Mm,
and then for whatever that business problem you have to solve, you have to come up with maybe three different territories, and then you multiply that by, maybe you get 10 to 12 briefs in a year. So you're always thinking of ideas. And
mm,
so you have ideas for work, but then like everything else is activated too. Um, yeah. And then in terms of like lifestyle, I think I'm starting to see, like I used to really love traveling a lot and at
mm,
the same time working, but like recently I did a trip out east, and I was like, all right, I think little things are changing inside me because I was like, I need to
mm.
slow down as
Oh,
well.
there you go. Okay.
But even during the pandemic, when I, when everything did shut down and I was like, all right, can't travel, can't do anything.
Mhm.
During that time, I was so restless, but I ended up channeling that into like a year-long project, and that calmed me down so much. So even if you lock me up into like a room, like I know I'll be able to entertain myself.
Yeah.
Um,
Tell us
yeah.
about the project. I saw it the other day and it's phenomenal. Tell us
Oh,
about
thank
it.
you.
It's
Thank you. Thank you.
tell us about it. Tell us what you did.
Yeah, sure. So it's called the escape roll, and it was basically how it started out was I was stuck in Australia, and I had gone there to visit this person that I was seeing, and ended up getting stuck in Australia because everything got all my flights got canceled. So now I was living with his family, and they were so sweet. They were so sweet. They took really good care of me. But I remember hearing about the news about how there's like a toilet paper shortage in Canada, and it was happening in Australia. And I was like, listen, man, I need one of your toilet paper rolls. I need to take it with me because I don't know what's gonna happen when I get there. And he was just like, okay, this is super weird, but like, here you go. And so I brought it home, and now in my room quarantining, and I didn't have any canvases or sketchbooks or notebooks or anything, but I had this toilet paper roll and I had some little micron paper pens. And so I just started sketching on one little sheet of the roll. And at the time I was in such a yeah, I was like super sad. I was super depressed. I was like, everything's falling apart, as we all felt at the time. And I just channeled that energy into drawing on this toilet paper roll, which was 37 feet long by the end of it. And it took me just about a year to finish it. And it was all these different landscapes from Europe that I had traveled to at the time. So it was super super fun, and it's like the first, I think, artistic project that I've actually completed from start to finish. Yeah.
There you go. Oh, it's phenomenal. It's
Thank
absolutely beautiful. And
you, thank you.
yeah, I don't know how you would display that one. You'd have to be very careful with
I know.
it.
I know. It's just sitting in my dad's basement right now in a little Ziploc. I'm like, I actually don't know because it's so fragile.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would love to display it, but I
Mhm.
think it requires some curation with like a
Absolutely. Yeah.
gallery or something.
Absolutely. It's like papyrus paper and onion skin.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That's good. Can you tell me about a time you talked about meeting people when you were traveling
Yes.
that expedited your growth? Can you tell us like a story of this one time that sort of pops out for you of someone that you met? And I mean, I just think back to times that I've traveled, and I remember sitting on a bench once, and there was this older gentleman, and we sat down with him, and he had so much wisdom. And then we never bumped into him again. We never saw
Yeah.
him again, but it was just this moment in time that was just like, what just happened? And yeah, so or a train rides with people that are going through things, and they get off the train and you're like, what just happened? It just, so can you tell us a time that sticks out for you?
Oh, that's such a tough question. I'm like, there's so many, but I also feel like I have recency bias where I'm thinking of the most recent trip. Um, but I think I would say it was a collection of people, but the people that I met when I was in San Juan del Sur in Nicaragua, back in February, I had just lost my job at the time, and I went down there just to like get some quiet space, and I didn't want to travel at all. I just wanted to stay in my
Mm,
little place that I booked. And I was like, I'm gonna go there and I'm not going to talk to anyone. I'm just gonna like be in my little bubble. But I just ended up meeting so many people there that were starting building projects, like actual like they were building their own homes from
mm,
scratch, or they had these creative projects that were all brick and mortar based. And
mm,
I thought that was so interesting because they were all kind of, I know, it's kind of in like my generation. And it made me think that so many, like even how I spend my time is always on my laptop, like I'm always creating. And it was
mm.
so cool to see people using their hands to actually do something like in the
Yeah,
physical realm,
yeah, for sure.
and it was just really nice to see that, we're kind of all one and the same, but these people have like really taken a few steps to be like, we're leaving Canada, or we're leaving the US, and we're going to make a life for ourselves here. So that
Mm,
was really inspiring. But yeah, it wasn't like any specific person. It was actually quite a few people from North America that had gone there for, I guess, like so many different reasons. But
mm,
yeah, I thought that was really inspiring. So I'm like
mm.
obsessed. I'm like looking at, what do I want to build?
Well, I was going to say, what is that to me? The words that come to me when you say that are setting down roots.
Yeah,
It felt like when you were saying that, I'm like, it sounds like people are that were there setting down roots, and
totally.
you being a nomad, how did that feel? Like, what was that feeling like for you from them setting roots and you being that sort of nomad person that likes to travel?
So funny that you ask. I feel like they were all like me. They were all travelers
Oh, really?
that were making a home for themselves there. And like I'm in a headspace, for the past few months where I'm like, I actually would love to have a base there and, just have a place just to be like, this is mine. And I can like, rent it out or whatever. But I loved that we were all coming from the same walk of life where we have a house, like we have a whole life in North America, but something is like not, there's like some kind of a wall that isn't allowing us to connect. And so we're like
Mm,
looking for home elsewhere. And I find that this is a thing for quite a few people, even friends here that are just like, I don't know, it could be the fact that things are getting really expensive. I don't know. There's so many factors,
mhm,
but um yeah, and a lot of people there were travelers. So I found I saw myself in so many of them. And
mhm,
I think that
mhm.
was really encouraging because I
Yeah,
think it would be nice to have my own space. Like even being able to interior decorate a place, like I would love that so
for
much.
sure. Especially being an artist, you can what you could do on walls and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like sculptures and stuff.
exactly. Is there a again the word that comes to me? Maybe this is mine coming up is restlessness.
Totally.
There's a there becomes this traveling and this interest, but at some point it becomes this restlessness
Totally.
that setting that down those roots helps with.
Yeah,
This,
I think so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm,
That's definitely something that like everyone that knows me kind of like tells me to slow down. They're like, you're gonna burn yourself out. You need to just like take it easy. And I hear them. Like I think sometimes I'm going a mile a minute and I think it's naturally happening. Like I was saying, like even with my East Coast trip, I was just starting
mm,
to really feel like I do need to, yeah, just like take my time. Like this isn't
mm.
like a race or anything. But there's another part of me that's like, there's so much I want to do. um,
Exactly. Yeah.
and it does feel like it's a race against time. So there's like a duality there a little bit. But I think the important thing that I've found is that it's not like I'm running away from anything. It's
Mm,
truly the pursuit of discovery and
mm.
just I just find this existence to be so magical. I'm like, what else is there? And I'm just so
Totally.
curious. But it does, I think you still can't that desire and that it's kind of like agreed to a sense where you just want more. And I think that's why the being able to meditate, being able to like practice, bring that holistic practice inwards
Mhm,
is like, okay, I could actually just not go anywhere and I'm just starting to really explore parts of my mind
mhm,
that's like equally if not more fascinating in many ways too to like
mhm.
get to know yourself. So yeah, that's just something that I've been doing just for
Yeah.
the past few years. So
Nice. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and the East Coast is such a laid back place.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
is.
it's
It is.
that whole vibe, for want of a better word, of just, hey, life is
That's true.
life is quiet here.
Yeah,
Um,
both out west and out east.
exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe this is a good time to jump into your timeless channel, because I feel like there's a something to explore here in what other people are saying and what you've said. So can you you have this channel called the Timeless Channel. I'd love
Yes.
you just share with us what that is, how it came about.
Yeah, so the Timeless Project is actually something that I started a few years ago because I just realized that I'm meeting so many people. You were asking about mentors or like heroes. For
Mm,
me, it was always in these everyday people that I would come across to the point where I was like, I feel like I'm meeting so many of them through travels, just through being at home, that I want to start asking. these questions about like mentorship, because so many people in this day and age, especially like when you look at Gen Z, you look at my generation, like millennials, we tend to have this tunnel vision of like what we think everything's supposed to be like, and there's so many people that have already kind of like done the thing and have very inspiring perspectives. But there's also another lens, which is when I look at, my mom, my aunts, my dad, like people that are kind of like in their middle age or a little bit older, who have this mindset where they think they've kind of like done it all and that's it. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
but no, because there's so many people I've met that are 70 years old, they're 80 years old, and they're doing crazy things,
Yeah.
um, like a passion project, or they're going on an adventure. They're still living and exploring.
Yeah.
And it was almost like, I think the seed of that idea just came from trying to show people that there is so much more than just like sitting at your home and calling it quits, like just, and if you're sitting at home and you're like inspired and doing something that's different, but that mindset of I've lived my life and now it's over, and you're only like 60 years old or 50 years old, like that's just like, it's like time gone to waste because there's so much left.
Yeah.
So I think a big part of it, of Timeless, is to show like how people make their time count. So we're finding
Mhm.
all these examples of that. And I have a wonderful group of friends that have kind of joined in and are helping with curating that project. But
Yeah.
essentially, like, it has a life of its own because there are so many layers to this topic.
Yeah.
It started almost like as a fashion thing, and now it's becoming more of like a storytelling platform. But I almost wanted to, I don't want to control it too much. I want to see all the different ways it can actually live its life out. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, the crux of it is basically to show people like, there is so much you can do
Sure.
and be and make use of your time.
Sure. And like to say that, showing that those younger generations that this is the wisdom in another
Yeah.
generation. So if you could, so I, as I do these interviews, or conversations, I start to see what I call through lines. So
Mm.
like themes and similarities. So the one with the touchstone from childhood, it's been a consistent similarity for everybody. So maybe what are like two through lines that you see as you've been going on this project and talking to people?
Um, it's like the universal truths, right?
Yeah.
That I'm finding. I would say that there's it's like I find with a lot of the people I've interviewed so far, they have this inherent sense of knowing. And I think
Mhm.
it comes from just being like through lived experience, and you just kind of know what to say. Whereas, even with me, like I don't know, maybe this is like a subjective opinion, but I really do find there's like this sense of knowing, and that could be, I guess, called wisdom. I don't know, but maybe it's
Mhm.
also my lens of, as a younger person interviewing older people, I see them as, like, yeah, sources of wisdom in a
Yeah.
sense. And another through line is also, they all talk about helping others as a way of living a healthy life and having a positive mental health. Like, they all talk about it to some extent, having that altruistic, you don't expect anything from anybody else, you just go and help your neighbor, like just go and do it, like it's not going to take much, it's something so small, just don't just think about
Okay.
yourself, help your neighbor. Like, they all to some extent talk about it. And
Wow.
that's so beautiful because, again, that kind of can be a lost art in younger generations, like tend to be a little bit more individualistic. So
Mhm.
yeah, more of like that community oriented mindset was very prevalent in all the
Interesting.
interviews.
That's
Yeah.
very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. What have you taken personally from them? Like, what's something that you've taken from all of them that some been a source of maybe growth for you?
Um, I think For me, it's just seeing this is an interesting question because I think for me it's like every single person, like of course there's universal truths in the interviews, but I feel that no one person is the same, right? And
Mm.
it's like I don't know how to explain this. This is so tough. But it's like every person has their own personal journey. And I had to remind myself never to get lost and compare myself to these people because we're all different. So you have to
Mhm.
separate the person from the advice almost. Like you can't just be like, oh, this person climbed Everest at 70 and I'm going to be exactly like that person. Like your journey is different, but it's
Mhm.
you have to see the nuance of that story. It's
Mm.
like how do you let the lesson behind that come through and not try to compare yourself, because I think with every hero a lot of people end up getting disillusioned by looking up to someone because they try to become that person, but
Yeah.
that's not what you're trying to do. Like you just want to be inspired by the person, that's
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I like that. We compare. If we take that
Mm-hmm.
comparison away, what are we left with? We're left with
Yeah,
the wisdom and the lesson and the inspiration to go do our own,
right.
to do
Yeah,
what's right for us. Amazing. Wow. Congratulations on the channel. I've watched a bunch of them, and
thank you.
they're and I hear what you're saying with there's like a comfort in speaking about your life,
Mm.
their lives.
Yeah.
And there isn't what should I say? It's this beautifully natural way of speaking that is just like, I think many people want to get to that point in their life
Right.
where they can speak like that and just speak from the heart. And I always find when I'm speaking from my heart and doing something that's authentic for me, that's how I speak.
Totally.
When I'm
Yeah,
not, I speak
so true.
fast, I hum and I awe and I fill in the space.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
it's so beautiful to see people, to hear more and more of that is so beautiful. It's just yeah.
Yeah,
There's an
that's
one, as you said at the beginning, there's that wonder and that awe, which
mm-hmm.
sounds like it's been a consistent in your life, is finding that wonder and awe, and seeing that in all of these is,
Yeah,
you get to do it
100%.
all
And
the
it
time.
sounds
How lucky.
exactly. And I mean, you were saying that you experienced that too, because through these interviews, you just get exposed to that feeling so much. And it's so special, so different with every
Absolutely.
person.
It is, but it's always, and I have myself, I for sure, and I often have people say, that's exactly what I needed to hear
Yeah.
at this time.
Right,
Today,
right.
I needed to hear those words. So people that will listen to this and go, "Ah, I just needed to hear those words today."
Yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, wow, wow. So there's a quote. I'm going to jump a quote in here because I found it this week and I thought it's sort of, finding your voice isn't about being perfect, it's about being real.
Mm-hmm.
So what is,
So
yeah,
true. I
yeah,
mean, to the point, like if, for example, I'm presenting a deck to a client, like I'm gonna be a completely different way of speaking, but it's so true that you just even the tone of your voice changes when you do speak the way you want to be expressed, right?
yeah, yeah.
It's so cool.
And we start to recognize that, we start to hear ourselves. I mean, one of the biggest things I ever learned to do was listen to myself speaking, and
Mm,
to be able to sort of, in the moment, step outside of myself and for want of a better description, be able to listen to myself. Like I'm speaking now, but I'm also listening to myself speak
right.
and hearing, well, what does that, how do I sound like I'm being a real? Do I sound like I'm trying to be absolutely perfect and have
Mhm.
it everything lie the right way? It's being able to hear that and recognize that, awareness of it
Yeah.
is yeah,
Very
interesting.
true. Do you ever find that when you do not speak the way you want to, like, do you ever feel like that physical stuckness in your
Yeah,
voice?
yep, I'll
Yeah.
cough a lot. Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Yeah, or I'll like clear my throat a lot.
Yeah, or like that ball in your throat. I always wonder, like, what is that?
Yeah, yeah, you're not, that's you're speaking from here, not from here, not from
Right.
the heart. So it's amazing. Um, so what, I think we've covered so many of my questions, but um, what does it feel like for you when you're doing something that's so authentic for you? What's the feeling like that feeling for you? You talked about wonder and awe, but what's that feeling for you when you're doing something that's like, this is me, this is just, I am so present. What, yeah, what's that feeling for you?
I think it just goes back to feeling like I'm connected with the universe to some extent. Like every time I listen closely, or if I, yeah, produce something or do something. It could be the smallest thing, like making myself a meal,
Mhm.
but tasting that meal and then feeling the gratitude or like the connect. I don't know. It's just like in these little random moments, sometimes I just feel like a rush of the oneness and kind of like this overpouring love that's just around us. And I
Mhm.
feel like the more I've started to pay attention to that over the years, the more I recognize it. And those are just clues when I know I'm like just on the right path, little things, you know?
Absolutely. No, and it is the little things that are
Yeah,
the big things. Really.
exactly. Like see little interactions that you don't think too much about, but it's just a feeling and you don't try to like go too much into it either. Like, cool, it happened, move on.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
took my dog out for a walk this morning and the wind was the perfect temperature and it was the perfect speed in my face. And it's like, there's a moment,
Yeah, it's
which
like a hug, right?
it is. But
Totally.
I think we as humans want to keep it. We want to grab it and
Mhm.
hold it
Yeah,
as
that's
opposed
true.
to it's the wind. Let it blow through you and
Right.
don't miss the next one.
Totally. It's
Yeah,
so true. Yeah, like wanting that moment to be infinite will just not let it be special anymore. The more
exactly.
fleeting it is, the more you just kind of like let it pass and it's beautiful.
Exactly. Exactly. So if you had some wisdom, and I guess I maybe see these as strategies as well,
Mhm.
but for finding, or being that pilots of our own life's journey, as opposed to being the pilot with, flying a jet for some other company.
Yeah.
What would you say? Give me three sort of strategies or pieces of wisdom that folks listening can take with them. There's been so much wisdom already here, but what if you had to narrow it down to three? What would you put in there?
I would say the first one is when you wake up in the morning and your heart is racing, or if your mind is just filled with, you know, not great things, you got to listen to that. Because when it's not like that, when you wake up and you actually get to feel the morning for what it is and your mind isn't cluttered, that sets the tone for the rest of your day. And I feel
Mhm.
like that's so important to just like get to that headspace. Because otherwise, the whole day is just going to be like basically trying to get away from that feeling you had the first thing you opened your
Sure.
eyes.
Yeah.
The second thing I would say, and this has just been my personal experience, is if you do feel like you want to do something and it seems like you've never done it before, or you're like, what are people going to think? It's like, if you really want to do it, just do it. Like, there's no need to question if you overthink it or over question it, whether it's a business idea, whether it's a painting you want to do. The more you overthink it, the more you're going to just like suck the life out of that thing you
Mhm.
wanted to do, and now it's just a stress. So just do it when it comes up, and see
Mhm.
how it kind of unfolds. And the third is just keep things light. Like, I think that life can get so difficult, and I feel like when you have that mindset of just being kind to yourself and to everybody around you, I feel like even the hard times feel a lot more palatable. It just
Mhm.
feels like yeah, it just feels like everything is a lot more easy. I don't think life should be
Mm,
hard because it naturally can get to hard situations. We all go through all kinds of things, but I think it doesn't have to be hard if
mhm.
you don't let it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that mindset, like you say, of
Mhm.
how do we come, we choose, and we have the choice is how we approach the situation. Sometimes
Yeah.
we don't have the choice of the situation,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we
I
have the
mean,
choice of how. Yeah.
this is just like a small little thing, but with all the wildfires going on right now, one of my really close friends, his house, like his childhood house, got burnt down,
Mm.
and his reaction to it, I was like, wow, like that, like when someone loses a house, like that's such a, that could be like that is a traumatic experience,
Sure,
but
yeah.
the way he broke it down was just like so, like, resilient, and he kind of just was like, I'm so happy for like the little things that haven't been burnt, and he was just talking about how if I let this kind of like take a hold of the rest of like the way I live and stuff, and like it's just gonna be a terrible experience for everybody. So him and his whole family have just mentally decided we need to move forward. And it's such a hard decision to make when it's like your home that you just
Yeah,
lost, right?
yeah.
But I just found that it's like even in the toughest situations, if you have the ability to make that mindset, it just takes the power out of it somehow,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I maybe he's the same person, because I heard somebody interviewed the other night and they'd lost everything, and but their mindset was amazing. I was like, how can you? And I worked in that field of humanitarian and disasters, and I'm like,
Right.
how do you how do you do that? How do you? I mean, you're gonna grieve and you're gonna cry, but you're gonna go through that. But oh my goodness, he was just so that his mindset was amazing. I was like,
Wow.
yeah, that's remarkable. So maybe the same person, who knows?
Could be, yeah.
Um, can we go back to number one just real quick here with the waking up? What do you do? What's your um strategies in the morning when you get up and creating that mind? We'll go back to mindset for the day.
Well, I can tell you first like what I used to
Okay.
experience and how I know it's so different now that I feel really good with the way I live. But I was working at this job where I really like my authentic voice was like gone. And yeah, so every day you're like hanging out with a boss that just is such a bully. And then I was in a relationship where it was extremely toxic on both fronts, and that was like the perfect recipe for my mental health to just deteriorate over time. And I just remember every morning, like my heart rate was so, it was speeding. It felt like I had just done
Mm,
a workout every morning.
wow.
And no matter what I did, I would go into the ocean, I would be in the sun, and you'd think, all these things are going to help. I'll be grounding, but nothing would work. And yeah, I would just have all these to-do lists and worries and stuff just pop up one after the other. But now that I've kind of shed those situations and I'm like doing what I love to do and spending my time doing what I love, I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do is I open the window and I get some sun in. And usually my mind is either quiet or it's thinking of dreams that I saw throughout the
Mm,
night.
yeah.
And then if I am feeling like writing, I'll write in my gratitude journal or I'll read for a bit. And then I always do a yoga session. So I want to move, not
Mm,
like a workout, because I feel like that's just too much energy in the
yeah, yeah,
morning.
yeah.
I wake up quite slow, so I like to do like a vinyasa flow or something for 40 minutes. And then have a little breakfast. And I feel like in all those moments, I really like to savor my time doing it. It's
Mm,
not like a passive activity. Like I really, really stay present in those things that I do, and then I start my day. But I like to give myself like 2 hours to just hang out with me. Everyone else is sleeping, so I wake up really early, you know. And depending where you are, sometimes it's really nice to go for a swim in the lake if you're nearby or by a body of water. But yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think I was listening to something the other day, and there was a gentleman talking about the same, similar his routine in the morning, and he was like, "I don't book meetings till after 10:30."
Yeah, because your brain's still starting to wake up.
Yep, that's my time. That's my creative time. That's all. Like you said, that's my reflection time. That's my journaling. And he's like, "No, I don't book meetings till after 10:30. You cannot get a hold of me till after 10:30."
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
I love that.
that's awesome. Yeah, you're not turning on the computer as soon as you're out of bed and
Yeah,
answering
that
the
can get
emails.
so tricky. Oh, I used to work in BC in EST hours, so I'd wake up at 5:30 and I'd
Oh,
be
yes.
working at 6. Oof, that was
Yeah.
I mean, it still was really cool because you can hike after too, so you have a whole day to yourself, but
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
sustainable.
I've done the job living in the middle of the country, but everybody in the team works across the country. So
Oh,
you're working 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. because
right,
you've got
right.
time zones and
Oh
everything.
no.
It was taxing. It was
I
so
can
stressful and so
imagine.
taxing that, yeah, a government job. And government jobs, like you're working
Wow.
with everybody across the country. So I hear you. I got that. This is awesome. There's so much in this. There's so rich, so much richness, and I commend you for being 29 and living that life. Like that's inspiring in itself.
Oh, thanks.
That's amazing. So a few minutes left here. Tell us what you have going on. What's going on in your life? What would you like to share with us?
Honestly, I would love to share just about the Timeless channel. So that is basically the Timeless channel, like I said, is going to have a life of its own, and we're trying to work with filmmakers at the moment who can kind of come on board and take the essence of our idea and try to build different long form documentaries about different people, about different stories, maybe when if in Canada, maybe it's around the world. But we're kind of like jamming on that right now. So we have that aspect of filmmaking that's part of the project. And I think a huge part of me also really wants to bring people in person together. So we're starting to think of different ways to do, whether it's like women's circles or, you know, little events where there's little meetups throughout different cities for mentorship to actually take place physically. I think those are two big pillars. So we're still exploring it, but I think yeah, if you are interested, you can follow the Timeless channel as well for yeah, these different stories of people hopefully around the world that we get to meet. And I mean, other than I always have 1,000 projects going on, but that's the one that I like to share usually.
And you're headed off to where are you headed? You headed soon?
Yes, I'm going to Portugal in a week actually.
And you'll be speaking to people over there too,
I think
probably?
so. Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
I would love to talk to some surfers or all kinds of
Oh
people there.
yes, yeah. There's that bit. What's it called there?
Nazare.
Nazare. Oh, that's on my bucket list.
Oh, do you are you a
No, I
good
don't
swimmer?
surf, but I have this affinity for big waves. This thing
Really?
that I've never seen a wave like over 3 feet. To see a
Oh my gosh.
wave of these massive proportions,
I mean,
blow
you've
my
seen
mind.
that picture where it's like literally a giant wall and the surfer is like this tiny. This from
I
Nazare.
I can't even I can't even fathom it. It just
Yeah,
because I can't even imagine it being real until I were able to see it. So
yeah, totally.
it's remarkable. The power of nature is just
And the fact that
tremendous.
people are willing to go into that.
Nature is like crazy. I don't think I go that far, but just to stand there and see it is just to be, yeah, that would be something. So
Sure.
thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you,
Thank you
Linda.
for being here. Thank you for sharing you and your wisdom and your life and your voice.
Thank you. And I love what you're doing. I love this project. I think that you're finding a lot of different perspectives too. And Yeah, it's very cool
Right.
what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. It's as yours, it has a life of its own, and
Yeah.
we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. That's the best thing, is a project that you let take its own
Yeah, exactly.
its own way and its own journey, and you follow that journey, as
Exactly.
opposed to trying to pull it, drag it along
Right.
kicking and screaming. It's like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
I'll follow you. I'll stay open and I'll follow you. Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's
And
exciting.
thank you everybody for listening today. Thank you for being here. And if anybody knows of anyone or themselves would like to think you might like to share your story, share your voice, share your story of finding your voice, I would love to hear from you. So drop me a message somehow. We have our Facebook page, and from that, we have somebody from Australia coming to visit us next one, and more information to come on that soon. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye.